You found us. I'm so glad you did, but I am sorry that you had to. Who are we? I'll tell you what we're not. We're not old, we're not boring, and we're not giving up. So come on into our Widow Circle where trauma meets humor, and we remind you that you can not only survive, but thrive. This is Every Widow Thing. Today, we are talking with Julie Halbert. Julie lost her husband, Jim, in 2018 after a very quick cancer diagnosis, and he was only 51. Like all of us suffering this kind of loss, Julie and her two boys had to find their new normal. But instead of trying to make her life the same as much as possible, she totally turned it upside down. Her grief put her on a completely different path. She chose to walk away from her career as a high-level legislative counsel and education attorney, and she stepped into the role of death doula, end-of-life educator, a transformational soul coach, like completely went in a different direction. And I'm so excited for you guys to hear her story. She truly defines what we mean when we say not only survive, but thrive. She is living proof that you can take the wreckage of loss and create something deeply meaningful from it. She wants to get real about death. She wants to get honest about grief. She wants to show us how to live a life that is fully awake, even when it's the life that we never planned for. And we are so excited to have you here, Julie. Thank you for joining us.
Yes, thanks for being here. Oh my goodness, so nice to be with you, Whitney and Holly. Thrilled to be with you and all your audience.
Yes, I'm really excited because, like I said in the intro, you really are doing the things that we talk about on this podcast about, you want to come out of, the goal is to come away from this experience being better than you were before, being more of who you were meant to be. And we talk about that a lot, about how we've changed because of our grief. And it doesn't have to be, of course there's sadness, of course there's, deep loss, but you can come out of it, and we're going to talk about the projects that you have, but like a phoenix. And I love that. But before we get into all of that, we want to hear a little bit of your love story and talk about Jim and who he was and how you guys met.
Sure. First off, so much in that you just shared, right? And I think it's really important for everybody to know there could be so much pain, and yes, there's so much room to thrive. So it really is a journey, and I think, I've definitely lived it, and I'm grateful to be able to share it with you. So my beginning story, yes, young, many years ago, decades ago, I actually saw my husband in this domestic law class. And I always laugh about it because I say, we were learning about divorce when we met, which I think
I love that. Yeah.
I think that's just funny. Like, what are the chances, right?
Yeah, that's hilarious.
But so he used to ride his bike. I went to University of Miami Law School. That's where we met. And we were in class, and I saw he was just so cute. I grew up in Charleston, South Carolina.
Okay.
And he was like super preppy. He was just adorable, and he just like tall, 6'4", blue eyes. Like he just caught my attention like very early on. Yeah. So I thought I was coy, but I remember
we always think we're coy,
right? Right. I remember like looking over my shoulder, and because I was a nerd. I was always towards the front, and he was very relaxed and further back, and just really truly checking him out, So I was like, oh, how am I going to meet this guy, So I'm very extroverted, as you can tell, within a short order of time, we met, and really it was just a blossoming initially of a beautiful friendship. Like I say, it was, I have no problem saying I'm 57. He died at 51. I was 50. And at that time, it was just like this blossoming courtship. It was really just beautiful. We would like bike together. He lived in Coral Gables. I lived in Coconut Grove in Miami. We went to University of Miami Law School. And so we spent all this time like biking, playing tennis, doing things in the water, just swimming, boating, just really, obviously we were in law school, but we really enjoyed life. Mm-hmm. And that really is like the core value that I bring us back to today. And you know what? I love that I'm saying this to you because I've written the book. I've talked about this in the book, but I don't think I've said that out loud. Yeah. And that is like a really complete full loop back to where I am today.
That's
right?
Awesome. Yeah. The way you started with Jim. Yeah. That's pretty cool. I love that.
I've never said that out loud like that. So it's so interesting doing these podcasts. And I'm so excited. I know the two of you are here and I wish it was the three of you, but I said to woman who's doing my publishing, I said, it's like a View interview. Like, I'm really excited to talk to these women.
I know. Kira is out of the country. She's visiting her son. He's in a study abroad program. So she's in the Netherlands.
Oh, well, good for her. But
but she's going to be bummed that she missed this.
Well, when the book comes out, maybe in the fall, we'll do it again.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. Great idea.
But anyhow, so it started as a beautiful, really courtship. It was like a deep friendship. And so I really kind of love that. And then in time, this is funny too. These are good. You're asking good questions because sometimes I don't even talk about these things on podcast. And in the beginning, so I was on moot court, like I was involved, which is like a board, like as far as like you do litigate for your class grade. You have to have a litigation. You actually go to court and you have like a mock trial, right? Mm-hmm. And so Jim had like the most innocent face. Like he looked so young in his face. So I was like, oh, he would be like a great witness. So for all the women listening, right? I'm like, this is a great doorway to getting to know him further, right?
You had your end.
So I asked him to be my witness and he agreed. And so that was really actually the beginning of the relationship. We were like, he was sitting at a conference room table in law school and I was standing and I was asking him questions and it was just, this is the truth. Oh my God, vulnerable, here we go. But like, not even talking about death, but I literally came up behind him and like kissed him on his neck. That was like the first time I like kissed him. Yeah, it's the truth. My children, are you listening, boys?
Right. So, the toy went out the window, apparently.
Right, exactly. Like what happened? But I don't know. But we had been friends and so connected. It was just a beautiful courtship. And so it really, that was the beginning,
Yeah, I love that. And then so you get married and you have 2 little boys.
So I there's a lot in between there, right? So I'll just give you like real quick second. But we got married at 28. We moved back to Pennsylvania where he was from. He was in the real estate and development business. Things got kind of hard. We had some really tough times at one point. And then we moved to Florida where my mom and family's from in the Tampa, Sarasota area in 2017. So I just want to not leave that part out. But we raised the kids in Pennsylvania. We had a great upbringing. The kids just a very wholesome, I would say, in a way that it just was a very nice community. And then in Florida, my youngest was a sophomore in high school. So when he was at an IB, if you're familiar with an international baccalaureate program, but a great public school. And he was doing sports and playing soccer and, just getting engaged here. And my oldest was a freshman at University of Michigan. And so that's kind of where we were. In my job, I work with school districts all across the country. Mm-hmm. So my boss was so cool. I talk about work and like remote and how things have changed and COVID, et cetera. But even back in that time, I went to my boss and I said, listen, I really want to do this for my family. And I was able to work out a deal for me to work. Like I was already working remotely back and forth to DC, but he was amazing, like so cool.
Good. Yeah, I would think Florida would be a fun place to,
oh my gosh,
set up. And obviously you guys had the whole Miami experience too, right, which I don't think I would have gotten through law school if I was in Miami.
I hear you. I think some people have it as a challenge for sure. But, we love the water. So we have a boat. We spend a ton of time like kayaking. And so the water is like, it's really funny. And we never know what we're going to talk about.
I know.
The 4 of us in my family were all water signs. So my one son, youngest, is a Pisces. My oldest, our birthdays are a day apart. We're both in July. And then my husband was in Scorpio. So he was in October.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that's awesome. So 2017, you pick up your family and you move and a teenage son. That had to be hard for him. So you were navigating real life.
Absolutely. I don't want to put that to the side because it's like very real and like the stress around his work and life and whatnot definitely contributed. Listen, I want everyone to know, right? Our stress and our lives contribute to disease. They contribute to what I call like, are we in ease or dis-ease? And it's a serious conversation. Stress is very real. So,
I remember the first time I heard dis-ease and I'm like, oh, dis-ease. I had never really, you just don't think about separating it like that. You're just reading disease, but it really is true.
It's so true. Your prefrontal cortex, like when we're in fight or flight and we're giving off cortisol and what that does for like PTSD that people read about, or Bessel van der Kolk writes a book, The Body Keeps the Score. Mm-hmm. I bring that to my speaking and a lot of work that I do. And it's really, when we are in stress, like, right, how do we manage it? Do we go internally or do we, fight? or do we work towards healing? So we'll
Yeah.
talk about all of that, but all of that has definitely contributed. But my youngest son, his name's William. He was a great sport. He played soccer at Riverview. He was in the IB program. The teachers were phenomenal. The principal was just great. And even when the time came for the passing of my husband and when he died, they couldn't have been more supportive. So we were really blessed. I was really grateful.
Great. Well, let's talk about that.
Sure.
All of that time. It was a very short time. So just take us through how it started.
Well, I have a question real quick.
Sure.
How long had you been in the new, like since you moved before he got sick?
So not Holly, not very long. And I really felt, it's a good question because I really felt really sad about it. Like it was something, he loved the water. He was so excited to be, we had we were on siesta. We were actually running at the time and we were like 3 minutes out, on the boat. Right. And so he was so excited for that space and he was transitioning for his own work. And I was really sad because it wasn't that long. It was summer of 2017, and then he died December 6, 2018. So it's a great question. After he died, I moved into a new place, and I'm in my own place. I kind of created a sanctuary of my own. But yeah, it wasn't long. So
I think a lot of widows, it's just natural that your brain will go to, oh, this isn't fair. We had all this planned. And like for me too, we had just moved to Austin and he died 3 months later.
3 months,
yeah. 3 months after we moved here. And you're just like, no, this wasn't in the plan. Like we had so much that we were going to do here. And I'm sure, especially because you were going to be empty nesters soon, like you had these ideas of what your life was going to look like as this couple in Florida with your water and you get to recouple and then it just,
life can suck sometimes and be hard, right? And so you go through tough times, and everybody that we were together 25 years, right? So it's like to be so grateful to be in this space, right? And like not to have the opportunity for him to fully live it. Like our kids, we enjoy it tremendously, but I think about that often. So I appreciate, Holly, that you asked that question, right? How long? Because it wasn't long. And I feel for you, Whitney. That just sucks. 3 months.
It sucks. But
Did you know very many? I mean, you'd been there. I mean,
your parents were there, but
no, but it was new in the sense my family, my brother and cousins and uncles and people all live in Tampa, and I went to high school some in Tampa. But my parents are in the Sarasota area. They're about 25 minutes from me. They're in like the inland a little bit. But no, this was new. It was a newer community because we chose Sarasota over Tampa. And so, yeah, it was still a transition, but I love people. I love community work. I still had my job. I mean, we loved all of where we were. So that was really positive. It's just the timing. So to go back to your question, Whitney, about what happened is really, it's so interesting because as I work as a death doula and I'm talking to these producers about a film we're working, their film and my book, and we're doing a whole collaboration with Hospice and the Hospice Foundation of America with education. And part of what we were talking about is like, you have terminal illness, and Jim was terminal illness, but then you have, tragic, traumatic, accidental deaths, which we talked about the other day, right? And so Jim died literally in 3 weeks. Initially, they thought it was like an infection. So there was a time before that in which they gave him an antibiotic because his white blood cell counts were high. And we had been in Belize, we'd been on a cruise, and his doctor just thought it was an infection, right? And kind of what transferred is that my sister-in-law was pregnant, and my mother's birthday, we were supposed to go to brunch, and Jim just looked at me. He said, honey, I don't know what is wrong. The doctors, I keep on taking these antibiotics. They even did a bone marrow biopsy, and that, thought, oh, maybe it was leukemia, and that was negative. Can you imagine?
No.
Like now, like then I was like so happy it was negative. Now I think, gosh, I wish it was. We had a chance to fight something.
Right.
We had no opportunity to fight anything. There was no, so initially, then we went to the hospital. I'm like, honey, we have to go to the hospital. We don't have a choice. We don't know what's going on. The doctors aren't giving us information. So we went into the hospital on November 5th. It was a Monday morning. And they initially, it's so hard to go back to those moments, but they initially did all kinds of initial scans and blood work, and there was no markers for anything that was cancer. They saw clearly that his white blood cells were high. And we ended up in the hospital that week, and it was like an ebb and flow. And we had an infectious disease expert and also doctors from Moffitt Cancer. And eventually in the middle of that week, they did a liver biopsy and he did not have liver cancer. So this just sit with me and be in this crazy space, right? So there's
and you're getting what you think is good news in a way, because it's like, okay, it's not this cancer, it's not this, it's not that. But at the same time, it's not, you don't know what it is. So it's just this limbo.
And I felt so bad for him, you guys. It was just horrifying for him because he was so frustrated. Before we even got to the hospital, he was like, he's a kind, introverted disposition. And he was so frustrated. He's like, how do you go to hematologists, oncologists, and they can't give you answers? Like, how is that possible?
Yeah, that's
right?
frustrating.
They treat all these people, but you can't treat me. Like, what's going on?
I know my husband had some stomach issues that were never figured out. And he would always be like, I don't get it. I'm great at my job. And people come to me and I figure it out. And then we're going to the best people and they can't figure it out. They're supposed to be the best at their job. And I'm like, I know.
And it's so frustrating, right? The frustration is real. So anyhow, that week in the hospital, we really had ups and downs. Like we were so excited one day. I think I told you this briefly, but like one day, like with the infectious disease, his white blood cell count went down like significantly. And my older son, Jacob, had come from college and he was there with him. And we're like, okay, my husband loved pizza. We're going to get this nasty pizza from the cafeteria. But he was like so excited to get this nasty pizza from the cafeteria. It's funny how I'm sure all of you, we have these like things in our minds. But I could see that. And we thought like for about a day, about 24 hours, you thought, oh my God, thank God it's an infection. It's going to be okay. And we're moving forward. But
and what's he and he's fully aware and talking and he doesn't feel well, but it's not like he's going in and out of consciousness.
Or not even a little bit. He's completely aware. He's completely lucid almost to the day before he died. So
nobody's thinking at this point this could end badly.
But he had to be bad enough to where they kept him in the hospital, because usually they're like, scooch on out.
So he had, he was right. Get out of here.
Yeah, get on out of here.
He was sweating. He was losing weight, and he had loss of appetite, which are often signs for cancer, right? Mm-hmm. So those were signs that he did have. And and Holly, it's a good question, right? Because this is where I say to everyone listening, like, where does our intuition come into play? Where is it that we're listening? One of the ER doctors said to me this, right? And I was telling Whitney this in the pre-interview, just said to me, get whoever home that needs to be home. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, why is he saying this to me? Right? Like there was no indication of why.
Right. There was no prep.
Like, why?
And it was very vague too. And you're just like, nobody's giving you, obviously these doctors had these thoughts in their head of like, this is not good. And he might not make it.
Did you look at him and say, why?
Well, I looked at him like, listen, I'm a lawyer, right, by training. So like I inquisitively said, what do you mean? Do you mean like immediately? He's like, no, just whoever needs to come home. And I did ask questions. I'm like, are you saying like within a month? Are you saying within a week? I think I did.
Yeah.
It's like my natural thing just to kind of ask some questions. And then I remember going back with my mom into the ER space and thinking, this guy was not even our doctor. He was like one of the head ER doctors, right. But he was an R doctor. And I was thinking, he's crazy. And so you immediately repress what you don't want to hear. And I just went back into my survival mode of like, okay, what do we need to do? So what happened was he had a liver biopsy that Wednesday. And I remember going down with him, like into the basement, kissing him on his forehead and saying, honey, I love you. It's going to be okay. And just being with him. Mm-hmm. And after that, it was the next day that everything just fell apart. The Moffitt cancer doctor pulled my mom and I, and you think about it, like any of the horrible ER doctor shows, from Grey's Anatomy to Pulse to whatever, it was in this conference room with the tissues on the on the table. And man, I see that table, like I have hives just thinking about it, right? It was the Formica and just all of it. And he says to us, he had what they called undifferentiated cells that were in the liver, but they couldn't figure out where the primary cancer was from. So this is called cancer of an unknown primary. And less than 3% of people are diagnosed with that annually, at least it was that year, because they can't figure out how to treat the cancer because they can't figure out where it's coming from.
Wow.
Okay. So you talk about frustration from what we were talking about from before. my husband, I was like my mother and I were just in a state of craze, just completely like, and of course, like my dad, everybody's involved, but just my mom.
But Jim is in his hospital room and they pull you guys into another room. So have they even told Jim this?
No.
They're telling you guys, but he's perfectly aware and competent and
that's a very important point, right? Because they're like forewarning us first. And of course, he's completely aware. And of course, the day before, we're all but celebrating the fact that we think it's an infection.
Right.
So, you talk about ebb and flowing, like it was just stressful beyond means. So yes, of course, they tell him. Of course, they explain this cancer of an unknown primary. And we get released from the hospital that Saturday. So we were in the hospital not quite a week. And we go into, listen, I was a major attorney. I am a type A. Find it, whatever. So my mom and I are like calling everybody we know. What do we need to do? And to be honest, I had a cousin who's actually ex-husband who was still very close to us, whose family member was in charge of radiology at MD Anderson. That's the truth. And we were able to get into MD Anderson, like literally within like less than 10 days. It was Thanksgiving in between. And we were seeing the top GI specialists of all of MD Anderson within a very short time frame. We had the next week, he had to have a PET scan done. He had to have an endoscopy, a colonoscopy. And then it was Thanksgiving, literally the next day. And then we left Sunday evening for Tampa and then to Houston like that Monday. So, I mean, it was, and literally we went to Houston, and this is really sad, but this is, again, like the doctor, she was really nice, but the resident, and this is, I guess, I'm a lawyer, so I'm always like, it's not slander if it's the truth, but the resident was so cold. Her nonverbals were so like, he's just going to die. Like I felt the energy of such lack of compassion. And the doctor herself had tears coming down her eyes, and she was seeing and evaluating Jim, and she's like, let me just put the pathology, let me send it back to them, because we had some from the liver biopsy, we had to decide, does what they had, did it go to MD Anderson or did it go to like Foundations One to try to get information for the immunotherapy? You have to make all these quick decisions. It's so stressful and you're so emotionally deprived. But anyhow, she said, let me just see. And, you'll come back here on Thursday and we'll see if there's any chance that we could do treatment. And I literally came back, and one of my best friends was with me. She stayed with my husband back in like the suite, the hotel that we were staying at. And I was talking about denial. It didn't matter what anybody told me. I was stacked with from food to wine to whatever, thinking that we were staying for like weeks, and my son was going to be living with his grandparents and going to school, and my sister was coming to help. I mean, I literally did not see what was coming.
Well, you just keep thinking, well, we're at MD Anderson. Like they can figure this out. And it's almost like you said, you're just in survival mode. You literally can't process it. And because they're not even naming it yet, you're like, okay, well, once they find out where it's coming from, we'll fix it.
Yeah, and it's just natural to feel that way. And I guess, at Holly, one point, so it's amazing how even now you have the brain fog, but he had something that's called ascites. So he would get fluid in his stomach, and that was part of the problem. So by that time, when we were going to MD Anderson, not when we first went to the hospital, but afterwards. So she was concerned a lot about the fluid in his stomach. And that definitely, again, it's like an indication that there's a significant problem. So I was very still hopeful, and I still was doing everything we could. But to make it, I guess quicker to the point, that Thursday I went back, I met with the doctor, the resident, all the social workers were there. Clearly I know that it's not good. When you have the whole team of people and they're pulling you into another room, different tables set up, now I'm like in a rectangular form with more tissues and more whatever. And I am like, my husband was on the phone with my dearest friend, his brother who's a doctor, my sister who's a hospice nurse. Everybody was on the phone with me on speaker with them, and listening to what they had to say, because I needed whatever support I could possibly have.
Yeah, and like you said, you're in a brain fog too. So even if under normal circumstances you would understand what's being said, I don't think you can. Your brain's just not working at the same capacity.
You know what? I want to take a moment to maybe emphasize this for your listeners, because what you said is really, really important. All of us have been in this space one way or another, and if you have an opportunity that somebody, friend, family member, whomever, can be with you. Like my girlfriend went with me, and she has a medical background and like really clinical and public health and whatnot. She goes, Julie, you go so you can be the wife, and I'm going to go with you so that I can deal with the medical. But, even, and if you don't have that support, put a voice memo on, record the conversation, do whatever you can do to have somebody else with you, because, even today we talk about it and we heard things differently. So it's really important.
It's so important. Because I was in the situation when my husband died in the car accident, my son was injured. So I was in full on, save my baby mode. And my good friend was a nurse, or is a nurse. And I was like, please just be there. I mean, like the doctor's like talking to me, and I'm like, I don't even know what he's talking about. I can't, so Kim was there like taking notes and explaining everything to me. It's so important.
Well, I would even say to people listening, even if you don't have a medical background, grab somebody with a notebook, and they can be writing things down or recording it on their phone, just to have another set of ears and maybe a brain that is not traumatized, and that's what happened to me in the beginning. I also have a friend that's an ER doctor, and she listened in, but I also had a friend that just came up with a notebook and just started taking notes. And it was, not only was it helpful because I had the information, but it was comforting to me because I'm trying to understand everything. I'm trying to listen, but I'm not able to fully focus. So it made me feel better. So even if you don't have a friend that's in the medical field, grab somebody with a notebook. Yeah.
And I think what's really important, and for every one of us to say, how grateful we are to those people for showing up for us, right? I'm going to cry. See, it's like all these years, but I don't know if any of you watched Madison that's out on Paramount.
Girl.
I'm scared to watch it because it's
it is
sad.
So raw and so real. And I mean, shout out to Michelle Pfeiffer, but also to Taylor Sheridan. I don't understand how he understands grief so well, but he's written about it multiple times in different shows. And I always am so impressed. I'm like, he nailed it.
But, it does make me cry. But that scene, for whoever's listening, if you haven't watched it, but there's a scene where a dear friend goes with Michelle Pfeiffer into the water. She's just sitting right there, and she's like, and it's funny because she's in all of her fancy clothes.
Right.
And, afterwards, I reached out to my dearest friend who was with me in Texas, and I said, her name's Rachel. I just said, honey, I just want you to know, I know I've said thank you many a times, but the level of gratitude I have for how you were there for us and how you showed up for us. And those moments, I mean, it is like so important for people to realize.
And not even trying to make it better. Like, I think you talk in some of the things that I've read about how, it's not about fixing it. You just sit in it with us, be there, hold space.
Yeah, there's nothing to fix. I say that all the time,
Yeah, he's still dead. They're all still dead.
But the grief is so real. And being in presence, even I think like Holly, like you were saying, just having your friend present with you, like having that sense of being with somebody, it just does something for your heart. And I think that's, and I believe too, Whitney, we talked about it, but some of the work I do in coaching is like through heart coherence. And that's where we begin to work through a lot of the grief. I call it, finding the beauty through the pain. The death is real, the grief is real, but how do we come out the other side? And that's the work. It's really a choice, and it's work.
Remember my boys, I have like a visual of Zach sitting on the couch. He wasn't supposed to watch TV because he had some head trauma. And I remember he and his best friend just sitting on the couch together. They were just sitting side by side, and his friend was just there with him. And my other son, same thing, like his buddies would just come over and they would just hang out. They weren't necessarily talking, and they would just
sitting in the water with them.
There.
Yeah.
is the best example, right?
Yeah, so
Really
good. Well, so let's go back into the hospital. And you said even up until the day before, Jim was very present. And
I mean,
yeah,
Jim was super present. So so MD Anderson, not to rush through that point, but I went in that day and she said head doctor, her name is Dr. Vardhari, and it's very sad. She passed from breast cancer a few years after my husband had passed.
no.
And I found out through a professional person that we were aligned with. I think that she just gotten diagnosed when she saw my husband. And I think she realized how aggressive his cancer was and what she was facing. So she had the best help.
This is the one that was crying.
Yes, it wasn't about my husband. It was about what she was seeing for herself. And she literally died with young kids similar to my age a few years later. And she was phenomenal. I mean, she was literally on the cover, like inside the full page ad of USA Today, the magazine, when we were going to the hospital that week. So, I mean, I'm talking to you the best of the best of the best. But anyhow, she literally said to Jim, I could put you in the hospital and you will die of an infection, or you can go home to your children. And Jim was like, I want to go home and I want to go home now. And my best friend was able to arrange, this was in the morning, we got in on Angel Medevac that afternoon. They flew us home from Texas to Florida by, ambulance. He was on a gurney, out of the hotel, into the ambulance, into the airplane, into an ambulance, back into our home. And hospice was at our house the next day in Sarasota.
Both of our husbands died from sudden death. So I can't imagine those moments where it's like, there's nothing more we can do. And you're leaving the place that you thought was going to solve all the problems. Where is your headspace? I guess you're still in survival mode, but can you talk us through your...
No, it was different. It definitely was different. It was definitely shattering to the soul, right? Like I definitely felt it. I definitely knew at that moment that he was going to die. It was the hardest. You guys are good. You're asking good questions. I'm just bringing up all kinds of emotion here. It was the hardest thing for me because William was in school. He was in high school, and I wasn't with him. And he was, I had to let him know that we were coming home.
Yeah.
And he knew if we were coming home, it wasn't good. And I had to let my older son know the same. So those, Holly, you talk about your son, your husband's dying, but yet your son, it's like all of these mixed emotions are going on at the same time because all I wanted to do was to protect them, right? Like all I wanted was to be able to say, your dad's going to be okay. Right? Like talking about fixing,
Yeah. Well, you're like, I can handle my own pain, but I cannot handle their pain. Like that hurts me so much more.
Right.
It's just heartbreaking. And is Jim trying to stay strong and be like, how does that look? No.
Let me just tell you how Jim was, okay? Jim to me is like, this is a lesson for everybody listening. And I'm like, okay, these are my lessons that have brought me to today in a big way. I'm serious. So he's in the gurney and he's talking to the ambulance drivers and he's having these full conversations. And I'm looking at him being like I'm looking at the physical of what's going on. And I'm inside just, and he is literally as kind as he can be having conversations with these people. And I'm thinking, how is he having conversations? I remember this in my head, going oh my God. And my best friend, Rachel, she literally, she goes, Julie, I don't know why I did it. I knew I was never going to see Jim again. They took him into the back of the ambulance. It's open. She takes a picture of him I have a picture that's in the book of the ambulance and him, she's literally looking into the ambulance. Right. And I'm in the front seat and we're on the way to the airport. Right. And I am listening to him and he's like, have you guys ever been to Sarasota? He is so friendly. And then we get on the plane and he's saying, well, maybe my boys can take you out on the boat. How long do you have? You have 24 hours? How long do you have? You have to be in Sarasota. And so I always sit with that because what I am teaching now is about living awake and about being present and about being in the now, right? This moment with y'all, it's right now. This is our moment. We're in it together energetically. It's real. And he was able, after getting news that there was nothing to be done find a way to kindness.
Yeah. Inviting people out on the boat. Yeah.
They were probably like, why are you on this gurney? Why, like he's
Yeah. So full of life in that moment.
right.
Well, he just still had gratitude. He was grateful for these people that were taking him home to his children.
Wow. And so so you said then the next day hospice is there.
So, it's so interesting because and even before that, when we got home, my kids have got, they're there, my brother-in-law, my sister. So everybody's like waiting for us to come in from the ambulance. And I can see like we have a sectional and we sit down and our dog, we have this adorable black and tan Cavalier King Charles. And I see relief on my husband's face as he is telling them about everything from Houston. And he is just so grateful to be surrounded by love and to be with his family. And that's the truth. Like there's so many moments in that it was only 1 week. We came home Thursday evening around 8. He died the following Thursday at 3:33 p.m. on December 6th. It was literally Thursday to Thursday. And hospice did come in the next day, immediately enrolled him. And they were wonderful. I mean, my sister was a hospice nurse. My brother-in-law was a pediatric doctor. We had a lot of support within the family, but they were phenomenal.
Wow.
That's crazy.
And I'm just so fascinated because, like I said, we don't have those moments because our husbands died instantly for the most part. And I'm always fascinated with what does that last week look like? Does he get tired of having people want to come over and say goodbye? Or is he, are the boys just trying to keep it together? Is everyone just faking it? Or do you really have moments where you're feeling alive and,
it was very real. There was no faking it. Yeah. So, and I'm like this now, right? Again, for all your listeners, depending on where you are in the process, like have your boundaries. It's okay to have boundaries. Say yes when it's a hell yes and say no when it's a no, and really honor that.
Yeah.
So people that we didn't want to come to the house, we didn't come to the house, family members, siblings, cousins, people who really were connected. They came, and that's who, he saw who he wanted to see. Unfortunately, his father had died in 2013. His mother was in a skilled nursing facility up in Pennsylvania. So I remember like it was like yesterday, and, I grew up Jewish and Jim converted, but he was talking about like Christmas, like in his early days. And he was just talking with like such gratitude for so many of his like childhood memories and telling his mom, thank you. And that she was like the most wonderful mother. And that he was just, again, like you talk about like the ambulance drivers, he is taking care of everybody else.
Yeah.
I mean, he was amazing how he was holding space. He was dying. And
I wouldn't ever want him to go to sleep. Like I would just be like wanting to curl up and just like soak in every moment and not let him, don't fall asleep. Like, let's talk.
We have this time.
Yeah. It almost is it's stressing me thinking about that, how heavy those moments are and how important
But just
they
remember, Whitney, I didn't know when he was going to die at that time, right?
Yeah.
Like, I still couldn't have imagined it would have been a week.
Right.
Right. So like,
That's
even
true.
though we're in it, like I didn't know, I knew it wasn't good, but like again, like who dies within a period of 3 weeks? Like it's just no diagnosis, no treatment, no nothing. Like it's just, so at that point, I want to answer your question because it's really one great lesson to share with everybody that I did do. And so really living, there were a couple of things. One, it's really important to bring the joy into the household, wherever that is. So like my niece kind of surprised my husband, and she came, and the kids were all like outside, and we're like against the water, and he could just hear them laughing and being kids. And he said to me, he goes, "Oh." He's like, it's like they're children again. They're little kids. They were 16, 19. They were still adolescent teenagers versus, being very little. But he said it was like yesterday, and it did so much for his heart to hear that laughter. So one, it's important to really be present. Two, my younger son said to me, "Mom, what can I do?" He's more of an introvert, very deep, very sensitive, has a huge heart like my husband. And I don't know why I said this. Like this just kind of came through me. And I said, "Honey, why don't you
You're a beautiful writer. Why don't you write to daddy what you're thankful for? What are the things that he taught you? Where is it that you have gratitude for the different lessons in life? And write it and then sit down, snuggle next to him in bed and read it to him. And he did that. And we have that letter and it's in my book. And what I do in my book is like I share my story, and then there's like a meditation, and then there's what I call reflection pauses. So then it's really like for the reader to go on your own healing journey through the book. Yeah. And I give examples of these type of questions, just like what my son did, that anybody can do for any loved one, a friend, for anybody. And so there's very real living that can be done in that space. And that does take me to being a death doula, because living at the end of life and really honoring the patient, and we call it the circle of support, but all the family, all the friends, whoever is present at that end of life, no matter if it's minutes, hours, or days, that you really are honoring the family, your wishes, and the wishes of the person dying.
Wow. Yeah, well, let's go there.
So my question, and you're kind of explaining it, but when Whitney, we were talking yesterday, I was like, my question is, how is a death doula different from hospice?
Yeah, it's great.
You're kind of going into that already. So now I'm starting to understand. It's more about is it like walking the people, the family around them through it?
So first of all, that's a beautiful way to kind of share it. A lot of people describe it as like, it's like a gap in the medical field as far as like, you know, if you're in the hospital, then you have palliative care that could be either in the hospital or at home, because that's comfort care, right? And then in hospice, when they come for hospice, I mean, I'm sure, you know, for any of your listeners that have unfortunately lost someone, you know, with cancer or terminal illness, the nurses and people, they come and they go. They don't stay.
Right.
So you have to deal with like, you know, support, you know, my brother-in-law, I think I was a doctor, so that was really helpful. But, you know, you have to support the in-between, or you have to hire a nurse somebody to be at home 24/7. So depending on the need of the patient. And some of my clients are not, you know, some people are at different stages of dying. So it just depends, because you could be, you know, in hospice, normally the criteria that it's like within 6 months of dying. But to answer your question about a death doula, it really can be different at different stages. So, for example, all of us, everybody, us included, we all know we're going to die. So how do you prepare for that? So that could be like, I have advanced directives. Do you have a DNR? Do not resuscitate? You know, do you want to be intubated or not, depending on the circumstances? These are like very major decisions, but they really empower you to make the decision, rather than putting it on a family member to have to make it for you.
Well,
right?
I think we had a friend on who was in hospice, and it's like you do so much for a birth plan, and you have all these ideas of what you want the birth of your baby to be like, but nobody really gives the same consideration to your death, and you should have a death plan.
Well, nobody wants to talk about it.
Right, nobody wants to talk
so
about
you guys are right on the money. So that's what a death doula is, and it could really be a lot of different things. So you have, you know, some people do like the legal stuff. Some people do, you know, spiritually, or what is it, you know, or if you're religious, like, what do you want to hear? If there's like just in a different spiritual space, is there a music or song, or are there incense you want to smell? Or, you know, I just heard recently, it was a great interview where somebody, the husband loved Dylan, and they like jammed, like they said initially, like the hospice people were like, no, you can't do that. And she's like, yeah. If the wife wants to do that with her husband, they're going to do it.
Yeah.
And so, you know, she helped like support them to do so. So like, I mean, I think it's a great example. Like, you know, like what honors them.
Well, obviously when your husband was dying, you weren't on this path yet. Did some of that happen naturally with him? You know, where you just started doing, I mean, obviously you said you brought people in that were important to him.
Right. I think I did things intuitively, right? Like, so, you know, as far as family members, there was a loving, he called her Sweet Nancy, but she helped me raise my boys when I was working crazy hours. And she's still a very, very, very important part of our lives and our families. And I love her dearly. And when she showed up, Jim, like, he put his hands on her face and he's like, oh, sweet Nancy. So like, you know, yes, like, you know, you definitely call in the people that matter. Yes, for Jim, it was actually we had the windows open to the water and the boat, and you can see that was where his peace came from. So I intuitively did a lot of things that I just knew, right? So I feel like he died very peacefully. And maybe that's a hard thing to say, but he did. People will say, "Oh, there was a good death," but he didn't suffer. He went quickly, and I would have loved more time. The kids would have loved more time, but my children, myself, were with him. The hospice nurses, everybody was in the house, but my boys were both holding his hands. I was at his knees. He was on his bed. My parents were in the room, and honestly, like, he just released his soul. It was it was beautiful to witness.
I'm glad that that the boys were there, because I think some parents, like we said in the beginning, you want to protect, and you don't want them to be a part of it because it's such a heartbreaking moment, but it's such it can be a very it sounds weird to say magical moment, but it's an important moment. So did you have any thought other than they're 100% going to be there?
There's no question.
Yeah.
My kids they were 16 and 19. They were right there with their dad through the end from this time we were home. I mean, they were constantly with their father. It was we were all together. Our family was completely engaged in supporting him. But I understand people fear that people are going to be agitated, or they're going to have different end of life can look differently. And and as a death doula, that's also what you do. You prepare people for what death may be, what the experience may look like. And so it's really just honoring, the family to make the best choices they can based on their circumstances, right? So my story is my story, but, I think it's really important, right? Each one of us losing a spouse that we loved, it's different for each one of us and every listener as well. So it's really, Elua Arthur, who I trained with, is called Going with Grace. It's where I did my death doula training. And she says something that I think is amazing. She talks about like leaning in. So you lean in where you lean into support, like where that support is needed, but you also have a strong back. So a lot of it is like where you have to see that patience, be quiet, be in a compassionate, loving space. So you really are going in and out depending on what the family needs.
So is there anything else that you wanted to share about that time?
No, I just would say to people that, like, it was very traumatic. There was definitely, I think death ends, some of it's tragic, like y'all are talking about, because things could be instantaneous, or in this situation for me, like, it felt like a slow kidnapping, because like, it's like, it was just, he kept on, we couldn't get answers, and he died still so quickly, that I just think that everybody to be mindful, to really listen, to really know there is no fixing, to really hold space and provide love and compassion for people going through this, and to really know not to be fearful to step in, because for those people that we love, there was nothing more important for them to be there for us in those moments. I describe in my book as well, as like a chapter kind of about, a tribe, a support, like how important that support is, as, that circle of support. And, I describe, my mother as like being like the trunk of a tree. And she was like the grounding force. Everything else was the branches and the leaves and everything else that supported me. But she completely kept us anchored. And that was literally after a few months of losing both her brother and sister. So for me, she was like an angel. And so it's just, that's, I think, important to really share, that it's just encouraging others that are listening to know, yes, please come in. Please come with your love and compassion, even if it's just sitting or taking notes,
One of the things that I keep thinking about your transition from this into like a death doula, and obviously I dove into the soul and stuff after Hunter died, so I can understand that side of it. But they're talking about protecting yourself. I remember thinking, I never want to feel this again. And even I had friends, unfortunately, that lost their husbands, 2 years after I did. And they wanted me to come and sit with them. And I dreaded it. I went, but I didn't really want to go into that space. So I would love to hear how how that transition happened for you, because you weren't even in that space at all. You were talking to the Supreme Court.
Right. Well, I want to, first off, I want to say, I want to affirm you, right? Because it takes time, and there is no timeline for, grief. Just like I'm crying with you guys today, 7.5 years later, it comes through us at different times, and it's okay. Right. And what I can do today, 7.5 years later, I could not have done 2-3 years after my husband died.
So you weren't in the death doula program like a month later or anything?
No, not at all. So what I did was I kind of felt, it's very interesting, but during COVID, I was working as my job as a lawyer, but it was an opportunity to become a volunteer with hospice in 2020. And there's a beautiful program called Blue Butterfly. And I'm so glad you asked the question, because if it doesn't exist at home in Texas, but it exists in Florida, and it may exist in different places around the country, it's a program that's called Blue Butterfly. And it's a grief therapy program where kids from the earliest ages, like very young ages, to middles, to adolescents, that there's a therapist and there's volunteers and there's programs for the family, there's programs for the parents, or who, depending on who's remaining. It could be for a parent has died, a sibling has died, a grandparent has died. And that's what I started with. So I started there because that's how I connected to like my own children, and they didn't have supports like that. So I was drawn to a program that was really there for kids that were living and that were trying to find a way forward. So just like your children and my children, that's where I was drawn to. And my mother still works very readily in that program every other week. So it's where I kind of started. Eventually I did some vigils, and now I'll still volunteer for them. Like, at Christmas time, they have a huge party and I was there, and they have camps programs that I've done. And so that's what drew me in. So that may make more sense to you.
Yeah.
I went through different.
I was just imagining, your life explodes. So you lose your husband, that in itself is, your old life is now gone. There's no, that changes everything. But then you leaned into it even more. When did how long did it take for that to happen? Or, like I said, I dove in, literally, I had like 10 books at a time I was trying to read and, do all of that right away. What were your few weeks like, and when did you decide to, shift?
It's a great question. So I did a lot of things. I'm not typical in any way. So first off, early.
It's that type A.
Right? So, I kind of looked into EMDR, and one of my sons was doing it. He goes like, "Mom, you're traumatizing me every time I go back in there." I'm like, okay, we stopped, so like that didn't work for him. Yeah. And he ended up eventually doing, some cognitive CBT therapy, which really supported him and kind of retraining and dealing with some of his, anxiety around the death. But for me, one of the things I did was yoga. And it was COVID, and my doctor's daughter was actually, her name is Shelby Ellsbury, but she trained the New York City ballerina. She was a professional ballerina herself, and she was just home. So she did private yoga sessions with me outside, and we used to do it literally at sunrise and sunset. And there were days, Florida would start raining, and I would just cry, and we would do yoga. So that was healing.
What a gift.
Yeah. Oh my God. I love her with my whole heart. But so that was just, I always said yes, you guys. You know what I say to your listeners too? Say yes to what feels right for you. Whatever that is, say yes. So there's a woman here who, some people call it healing touch. It's a little bit different than Reiki, but in the sense of working with the energy and helping me release the energy in my body, she was a gift. Again, we would do work and I would just purge, like literally just cry somatically. So I kept on exploring myself for what I needed to heal. And the thing is, it's available to everybody, is get out in nature. Go take a walk. Yeah. Walk and walk. I was blessed
and
to
feel the feelings. Get out there and purge those feelings. Cry in the rain. Scream. Do whatever you need to do to get it out.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. So, the point to answer your question is, yes, I did a lot. And then I went out to Sedona and I did a lot of work in Sedona with different healers. I really have and I'm going back out I have a partner now that I started dating about 2.5 years after Jim died. And he is a master in dealing with like trauma, and God bless him. I believe with every part of my soul, my husband sent him.
Yeah.
And it was like a divine plan for him to be there for me. But, we have been so intentional around working through the grief, not ignoring it, not avoiding it, not denying death, but instead like really walking through it. And with that has come my healing. And that's allowed me to kind of step into really wanting to be in service, which is what I call, consciously living awake and bringing presence to our lives now and really shifting to that place of thriving.
What would you say to people that are listening right now that are still so heavy that saying yes seems impossible?
Take it one step at a time, one day at a time. That there's no right timing. There's nobody gets to tell you how to do it. You get to tell yourself. And that's like, if I'm coaching any of my clients, it's really, I'm only the guide. You yourself are the guide. It's going inside within yourself and truly listening. And it's not, I remember listening to, another show, and it could have been, it's about when are we going to clear out the closet? When are we going to release things? I still have things in my closet that were gems. We were going to Australia. My time I study abroad. My son was going to study in Sydney, and I am clairaudient. I actually hear messages from my husband, and I know things. And he literally said, "Take one of my baseball hats." He's like, "I'm going with you."
I love that. Well, I'm glad you brought that up because, first of all, I have to know, were you always this in touch with your spirit and your intuition? And did you know you were? What is it? Clairaudio.
So clairaudient is when you
can hear things.
Hear things. And then claircognizance is like when you know things.
Right.
And I've always deeply known things. I've seen things before they happen. I hear things and like what people are thinking without them saying it out loud.
Well, that's scary.
It is a little scary, but it also it's really real. Because sometimes I hear things and I'm like, whoa.
You had that knowledge. You knew you had that before any of this happened with Jim.
Yeah. My mom actually wrote the introduction to my book. Oh. And I'll share this with you. And you're asking some great questions. I haven't shared this on any podcast I've been interviewed on. But at the age of 7, her dad died. And she came down one morning and then I said, "Mommy, Granddaddy came and he was all dressed up and he was on the edge of my bed and he tucked me in and I felt him touch me. And then he sat there on the corner of the bed." And she had seen him that night and she had the same vision. And she said she wasn't going to tell anybody. And she said she could not believe when she came down the stairs that I told her. And that happened multiple times beyond that time.
Wow.
So I, from a very young age, I guess I had that sense of intuition. But I always remember seeing things before they happened. But I think I've used it more in my interpersonal relationships, just allowing me to have a sense as far as communication and connection and that sense. But now Jim comes through all the time. And
I love to talk about this stuff. Yeah. I love it. Yeah. When was the first time that you remember Jim coming through to you?
It was pretty quick. It was days after he died. Wow. So my phone, just like it is, it's off, it's sitting on the bed. I'm in the other room, swear, right? It's thrown in the middle of the bed. And I hear Randy Travis's song, Forever and Ever, Amen.
Oh yeah, I love that.
Okay. Now that song was not it was on our wedding video. And it was the introduction of a lot of our of our initial pictures together, we did each of us and then us together. Yes. But it was definitely one of our songs. And the reason why I tell you that now, so that was the first time. It's only a couple days after he died, so it comes blaring out of my phone.
That is crazy.
It's off, and it's I'm okay. So what happens is my husband always makes me laugh and cry. I always laugh. There's always laughter connected to it. Another great story, my son William may not think this is so funny, but I think it's hysterical, is he loved The Office. And kids, 16 years old, he's in deep pain. And he would just he sat in his father's chair in his office, his physical office in the house. And in this recliner type thing. And he has on this huge TV, he's watching The Office. And my husband is enough. And he turns the TV off. No, seriously, this is for real.
I love it.
So William starts in this banter with him, Dad, I want to watch The Office. And the TV comes back on. And then lo and behold, he turns it back off again. And literally it went 2 to 3 times. And William finally got mad and said, enough. I want to watch The Office. And literally then it stayed on.
I love that the kids are feeling it too. Is your older son, does he also?
Yeah.
They're very open to it.
Well, I don't know if they're very open or that my husband just shoved his way in and that made them
But they're
open.
accepting that it's him. Like,
They know.
yeah, that's what I love. And my daughter, I think all my kids are like that, but my boys kind of keep it more to themselves. Whereas my daughter and I will be like, oh, there's dad, here he is, he's showing up. But I do think that helps with their healing. The person that they love so much is still very present in their life.
Yes, for everyone listening. Yes, yes, and yes, right?
Yeah.
I believe part of my divine purpose, like why am I doing this work? Why am I here with you guys right now? Part of it is really for all of us to know that connection exists. I have a lot of different examples, to be really honest, but to share one thing kind of on a personal level. So the partner that I've been seeing for years now is, his name's Glenn. And his son is born on my youngest son's birthday, and his son's was born at the same time my husband died. And that was at 333. And before my husband died for about 3 years, he was seeing the numbers 33 and 333 to the point that I have pictures of him pointing to the time or talking to people like, oh, this is $33. Well, we have to do this. Or on his watch showing the time. Wow. I mean, this is not a kind of sort of thing. And he talked to my best friend. I remember planned it down in the one room in the suite of the hotel. And he's like, how am I going to connect? And they had a conversation that you're going to connect through these numbers. So he literally shows up all the time through the numbers. And he has affirmed where I'm living right now. Like the time on I live in a building and the time for entry was not 3:33. But when I came to look at where I live and I'm sitting right at this very second with you guys, it said 3:33 there. And then 10 minutes later, I'm up in this condo, checking it out. And on the microwave, it says 3:33.
That's crazy.
Wow.
Okay.
But it's so comforting. I just love it. It helps you realize there is such a bigger picture here.
Right.
And we can get so focused on just the littleness of life. And I feel like death breaks that open.
Oh, gosh. Yes.
And not everyone knows how to handle it. I mean, it doesn't mean that we're not, you were just crying. It doesn't mean that we're not deeply impacted by the death of our husbands. It just means that we're open to learning the lessons from it and seeing the real meanings behind everything. I don't know. I get so energized by it. And I want other people I know are just so very sad right now. They're just so, so sad. And I just want to lift them up with that knowledge of there is so much more than what you think is going on. And our people are here and there is so much life left to live and so much joy. I don't know.
No, I want to say this, right? Because Holly, I do read minds, right? I know you might question this, sweetheart, but the bottom line is that it's hard maybe to believe in when we're in our mind, but when you go into a space, whether it's meditation or quiet or nature, or I would say to you, if you haven't connected and you kind of want to connect, what something I recommend is called automatic writing. And Julia Cameron has a book about this called The Artist's Way, but you literally just write for 15 minutes without pulling up your pen. And rather than your brain giving you messages, you start to come through. That's really your soul is speaking to the paper. Mm-hmm. So even every one of us has capacity, even if you think you don't, that they really are beautiful ways that we can connect. And yes, I've been very blessed that my husband is very present. And I don't question it because it's happened so often. Literally even as yesterday, if you want to laugh, I was taking a shower and I was thinking about Jim and I was thinking about something. And I have on my like list, so it has hundreds and hundreds of songs. And that song, Forever and Ever Amen, comes blasting out that I've not heard forever.
Yeah.
And then I get out and I tell my kids, I'm like, gosh, Dad's around, pay attention. And then I get this download. I hear, oh my God, you know what? I forgot we engraved our rings on the inside with it. So I take a picture and I send it to my children to see. I'm like, I'm not crazy. Here, see this. This says forever and all, it's says it on the inside of the teddy band. And then what's the next song that comes that I'm telling you, people can think I'm crazy. I don't care. But
no, I talk about it all the time. Hannah comes through with music with me all the time.
Yeah.
Wait, so this is great. So the next song is Billy Joel, New York State of Mind. So where are my kids? They're in New York. Their office is on the Hudson River. That's where they are.
I love it.
Like,
Busy, man.
Full circle.
Yeah, he wants to make sure you guys feel him.
I feel like, all of our spouses were young, right? They died young, and it's really rough. Like, this is like, we talked about this. It's not the same as living to an old age and dying, which is really sad. But this is what tragic deaths are, rip your heart out. And, to find the strength to move forward, it takes work.
Well, I know that there are people that are listening that are probably jealous because they don't feel like their people are coming through. So you would say, write things down.
Definitely the automatic writing.
And then sit in stillness, go in nature. Another one of our guests had said water and fire and I guess just nature.
Which is probably talking about the 4 elements, like the different elements.
Yeah. But
nature, and like Suzanne talked about nature.
Yeah. I do think getting close to, getting kind of centered with the energy of the earth.
No, it's really important.
Yeah.
Like, I can't tell you how many miles I've clocked on the beach with my feet in the sand.
Yeah.
By myself or at sunset. Like, really sit and be wherever you are. The sun rises and the sun sets. The moon.
And then I love how you said your dad's around, be aware, be looking. And I think that's the other thing that I want to tell people is you have to be open to you have to be aware. Whatever you're looking for is what you're going to bring, your attention is going to bring in for you.
Well, I think what's really important, what you're saying, is being aware, but it's also, there's a component of trusting and releasing the skepticism that, like, how can this be?
Yeah.
But the reality is that once you start to experience them, then you really trust them. But like early on, Jim was funny, like Jacob was having an experience at college and he was transitioning back to Michigan and it was hard. And something had happened and he didn't tell me. And the lamp started to flash in the hotel room. And he's like, oh my God, Dad wants me to tell you.
Oh,
and so,
great.
And so he had literally played a song and he cut it at 3 minutes and 33 seconds. And it was a song that was very personal between a father and a son. And it was a huge message to my oldest son. But yes, you have to be open and you have to be willing to listen.
Yeah. It brings so much comfort, I think, if you just accept it, that is them. Why wouldn't you? Why would you question it? That's what I always say. Just absolutely 100%. If you think it's them, it is 100% them.
Yeah. So so I have done a little bit of everything, right? So, the death doula has come through a place of really wanting to guide people to what I call, living and dying consciously awake. And really, like, what does that mean for all of us? It's for all of us, which any of us can do this. Everybody listening is being in a place of presence. So being in a place of presence for your children, being in a place of gratitude for the people that were there for you, being really aware of making our choices that are meaningful. And I say really, I really strongly say no where you want to say no. Don't go places you don't want to go. Don't spend your time with people you don't want to spend time with. Maybe that doesn't sound nice.
Yesterday.
But I'm like, say no. And I mean it. Like, part of my greatest freedom has come through the lesson of saying no.
Right. Well, that's another thing that I think death teaches you. It's like, what do you want to spend your time on? Who do you want to spend your time with? Because it can be limited. So don't waste your energy on things that that aren't bringing you joy, aren't lifting you up.
And you know what comes through when you say that is part of what I teach in my coaching when I'm working with somebody, but also it's being in soul alignment. I talk about it in my book as well, but it's about really, what is your passion? What is my sole purpose? No doubt, I made a huge difference in millions of kids' lives through my education law. It was really important work, and I'm so honored that I did the work, right? But I believe my purpose of being in this world today is helping others like ourselves move through this shitty ass pain of losing somebody that is so raw, so dismantling, so shattering to our hearts. I never cuss, but it is just whatever.
I cuss all the time, Julie. They're used to it.
But it just came through. But the bottom line is it's horrible, right? And it's just, but the bottom is like our ability to find what is our truth. What is it that you really love? What is it that you're really passionate about? And not only for ourselves, you guys, yes, for each one of us, for sure, but for our kids to help them. Our Western society has this habit of doing and not being, right? So many people, it's all about making money, your house, what are you wearing, what's your car? I'm sorry, but you take none of it with you. And when I'm with people at the end of life, what do I feel? I literally feel the energy of love. We come in with that sacred first breath. We leave with that sacred last breath. And we do not leave with any articles of clothing, material of any kind with us.
You're not your PhDs, nothing. Yeah.
None of it.
I'm feeling it right now with the kids because they're all in college and I don't have as, I'm not supposed to have control over them, but because they've been in my, I try so hard. I'm working on it, but I'm filled with a lot of anxiety because I'm like, well, what are they going to do next? And they too are, and I'm probably making it worse for them, but they're also like, well, then I'm going to do this, and then I've got to get a job, and then I've got to get this internship, and then that. That is the opposite of present because you're already thinking about, well, what's going to happen next? And how am I going to get this job? And then what am I going to do here? And
You're making me nervous.
I know it's so stressful. And so I love what you're saying because it's really about, it doesn't matter. And we're talking about it right now with one of Holly's kids, maybe the path that we were pushing them on, because that's the path everybody takes, isn't the path for them. And we have to let them trust their intuition and be okay with go on a different path. And guess what? If it's the wrong path, then that's okay too. You'll come find another path.
It's
I've been making sense.
No, you're not only making sense, you're making like enormous sense.
Okay, great. Thank you.
It's a lesson that I had to learn myself, right? My son youngest one was finishing his chemical engineering degree from Florida. But my other son, they have a startup called Ohana. It's for like subleasing platform for kind of college age kids, like for the summer for interning in New York or London or other places. And he was doing the software engineering for my older son, and they still work together. And the bottom line is he took a whole semester off, and then he ended up commuting back and forth from New York City to Gainesville to finish. And he had to talk to the dean of engineering himself and kind of negotiate a plan to complete his education. And he had oh my God, almost 170 hours, high honors. Mm-hmm. But the bottom line is he had not 2 classes to finish and he had to finish them. And so but I was flexible in a way that I never would have been before.
Yeah. Yeah.
I would have been no way.
It's a good message because a lot of our audience are young mothers. And one of the stresses that you have after you lose your spouse is, how am I going to do it all? I'm not going to do it like they would have done it. I'm not equipped to handle this. And all you want to do is make their lives wonderful. And so it's a great message of,
you can't do it all. You have to let stuff go.
Yeah, you have to let stuff go, and it's so I'm hearing from your kid that your kids are doing pretty well. They are thriving. They have a dead dad, and that's the same with all of the women on our podcast. Our kids, we worry so much about how they're going to handle this, but all of our kids. I mean, look, there's been some issues. It's not like it's perfect,
of course,
but they're not. They're resilient. They're handling it. They're happy. And that's another message that we like to tell people, because you do worry about how your kids are going to do after.
Yeah, I want to lean into what you're saying. The resilience is possible for all of us, the children and for us. Mm-hmm. And there's no perfect, right? There's zero perfect. So for any idea, for anyone to think that, there's some magic pill, it doesn't exist. Right. But finding that flexibility and really listening to our kids and really hearing what they want. My younger son's looking at options and maybe making some transition in work. But I keep on just listening and holding space. And I'll say to you, it's hard not to want to tell them what to do. Mm-hmm. But we step into a space of really guiding them. And, like I said, as a mom, you want to be the nurturer, compassioner. We think we have these roles as a male, female, depending on which spouse has passed or died. Mm-hmm. But you can't, Holly, you're right. You can't do it all. It's impossible. So we each of us have to do the best we can to show up the best we can every day. And some days are better than others.
And you're not going to have all the answers. I mean, sometimes I don't know how to guide them. I'm just like, I don't really know, and then I feel like a failure, but that's just part of it. We're not supposed to know everything. This is their life, their path, their soul. And so it's okay. There's just so much pressure on, I think, single parents in general to have it all figured out. And
yeah, but I would say to you, right, shift the language, right? We're all doing our best.
Yeah.
And I had many moments I thought I failed and like, oh my God, or I got upset about something that I shouldn't have got upset about, or I should have responded. You know, I think being a single parent, you just constantly are talking to yourself and questioning, right? But I think when you could just kind of get in flow and really trust, just like what you're saying, Whitney, that it's their journey, that it's their soul, that you know what, if you can find that trust in the universe, trust in the divine plan, and know that they will be okay and truly believe it, they really will be.
And everything is a lesson to, you know, the death of my husband taught me so much, and I am grateful for it. Now, would I love him to be here? Absolutely. But that's not what's happening. So I'm going to accept that, and I'm going to move forward with the lessons that I'm learning. And I like who I am I liked who I was before, but I like who I am now. And I do feel like I am more of who I was meant to be. And that was because of the grief and the loss that I've suffered. So.
But look what you guys are doing. I was telling my publisher today, it's like, I'm talking to the women that are like the view of widows. I love the fact that you guys do this together. I
love that. Well, before we go, I want you to talk about your current projects. You've mentioned your book a couple of times. The book is called Divine Ashes Ascending. It's not out yet.
It'll be out in October.
And then they can find that on your website or?
Yes, on the website. There's a book portal. Then you go straight to the email. If you give me an email, and we'll let you know as soon as it's out and available. And there's a free meditation on the website, so you can get that. It's like
share your website.
Oh, sure. It's risingphoenix.life.
Yes.
So yeah, you just put
you've
in
got that project, that's very exciting, and it takes a lot to write a book. So well done.
I'm waiting for my line edit to come back from my editor today. So I will be diving deep in as soon as I get that.
Yes, that's so exciting.
Yeah.
And then you also spoke to me about a project where you're collaborating with some people called Butterflies Have Been Released. Can you talk about that for a minute?
So there's two producers. Their names are Barry and Jason, and they did a documentary called A Butterfly Has Been Released. They have their own, it's called tgbeyond.com, and it is a documentary of a hospice nurse, and her final days, and really how she embraced dying. She did not have treatment. She had a huge celebration of life at home. She had a green burial. And so it's really about like dying with agency. How can we own our death? And how can, Holly, like you said, like as far as talking about it and people not wanting to have a conversation, it's a wonderful entry point to having some tough conversations, like in a really loving way. Her name is Allison. They refer to her as Nurse Allison. And she has this lovely spirit. And I'm actually meeting with, Empath Taiwa Hospice is our hospice locally and across the state of Florida this Wednesday. And we're looking at collaborating together with them with the film, my book as a launch. And the film itself, they've been working with the Hospice Foundation of America for continuing education credit for like social workers, nurses, and volunteers. Wow. So we're looking, you can see it. Like, I don't want to do a book by book. I'm all about getting it like really out there, really.
Yeah. All the things. I love that. And then you did mention your website, and could talk a little bit about Rising Phoenix and what your mission is there.
Yeah. My DBA, doing business as, is Rising Phoenix Life. Anybody can reach me at julie@risingphoenix.life, or on LinkedIn is Julie Halbert. But the bottom line is we all have choice. Right? We all have the choice. Are we going to be the victim, or are we going to suffer? And, I do talk about in the book, like looking at old photos and thinking, just like what you said, Whitney, you said I had all of these things I envisioned that we were going to have as a family. Mm-hmm. He was young. Like, this is like, I'm being so cheated. Like, our family, my children, it's not fair. I mean, we all go through those moments. But there was a moment in which I shifted, right? And I started to see the memory, and I found gratitude and laughter and joy. And then my energy started to shift. Mm-hmm. So for me, that's the Rising Phoenix. So everything, though, even though we're talking about death, everything is about life, and everything is about how we choose to live every single day, every moment that we have, everything that we do, everything that we are, and how we show up to the stranger on the street, the person at the store,
the ambulance driver.
The ambulance driver, you got it. Look at my husband.
Yeah, I know.
I mean, he was that's such an important lesson, right? Even until almost his final breath, he was teaching me.
Mm.
Yeah.
I love that. I'm getting chills. What a fun, awesome interview. Thank you so much,
I
Julie.
keep talking to you.
Let's go have wine. We'll come to Florida.
You know what? I have a great place. You know what? I have space for the three of you. Y'all come.
Yes, take us on your boat.
And you know what? You may laugh, but I'm not kidding. I'm serious.
We're not kidding. We're going to book a flight.
Well, we want to read the book, and then we'll have you back on and talk about
Okay.
Yeah. Well, and
Okay,
we're going to put all of these, everything that we've talked about, we'll put in the show notes so that you can go to Julie's website. You'll have the name of her book, and you'll know how to get in contact with her. And well done, girl. I mean, I'm
Thank
sure you
you.
hear
I'll
from
let you know.
Jim that you're killing it. You're doing
But I want to
great.
say something back to the two of you. I think
Yeah.
it's really important. And to all your listeners, and to Kira, who's not here. Is that right, Kira? Is that
Yeah, Kira.
And that's my niece's name, by the way. So that's kind of funny. It's a funny coincidence. So anyhow, I just really want to say you're making a difference. And that there's not a lot for this younger widows that have lost with younger children. And so to me, like when they asked me about interviewing with you, it was like an absolute yes. And I think it's so important what you're doing. And just keep doing it, think about, keep on thinking out of the box. Like, I'm here, I'm happy to bring my book and the film and whatever to your city.
Yeah, we could do a
people
whole
who are interested. I work just like getting sponsors just like to be able to bring it all forward, but they're willing, the guys that I'm working with are willing to go anywhere. So, I'm open.
Great.
Be creative and just keep on making a difference. I'm proud of you. You guys are doing a great job.
so much.
Thank you so much. All right. Well, we will be in touch. Get those guest bedrooms ready.
They're ready. They're clean. Come on now. You better be careful. I mean it.